We are still talking with China on a number of issues, as you know. Those talks will continue to go on. We want lower barriers across the board. Zero tariffs, zero non-tariff barriers, zero subsidies. Stop the IP theft. Stop the technology transfer. Allow Americans to own their own companies. Those have been our asks for many months. And so far, those asks have not been satisfied. However, hope springs eternal, and discussions continue. We had a small contingent from China here, 2 weeks ago or so. So we'll see. We'll see. This isn't, look, our view, the president's view, is not to destroy the Chinese economy. We're not trying to put them out of business. We're trying to get them to join the international trading nations world and be a citizen and abide by the rules for the first time in some 20-odd years. And if they lower their barriers and leave us to our technology innovation, you'll see a ton of American exports, which will shrink the trade deficit. That's the point. Lower barriers, open markets, quit stealing IP and technology. These things are not hard. So we're waiting to see if China will just say yes. Remember Nancy Reagan, Jimmy? She said just say no to drugs, and she was right about that. How about China? Once in a while, just say yes to one of our asks so we can move this process forward.
I love that. David?
Yeah, thanks, Larry. It's David. Yeah, structural reform is perhaps tough for them. Back to Europe, though, on trade, Larry. These reports that they were willing to get rid of all tariffs, was that true? And if it's true, why wouldn't we take that deal?
Well, we might. I mean, look, President Juncker, President Trump, when they met here and had their bilateral, a month ago or so, they talked about abolishing tariffs and non-tariff barriers and so forth. And we will be continuing those negotiations. Ambassador Lighthizer is going to Brussels this coming week to meet with Cecilia Malmström. I'll probably see them at the United Nations meetings in a couple of weeks. We're very optimistic. There are a number of transactions on the board, things like soybeans, things like LNG, things like beef, perhaps things like military sales. There's a lot of things on the board, and I'd say the relationship is growing between the U.S. and the EU, and I like the goodwill. I really like the goodwill. I talked to my counterpart. Bob Lighthizer talks to his. Perhaps President Trump will talk to Juncker again at the UN in New York. It's moving steadily. It's an orderly process, and color me mildly optimistic about that.
Larry, today the Journal tries to talk about whether or not there's the possibility of confronting China with, as you've said in the past, a united front. Get the NAFTA deal done, bring in the EU, maybe even bring in Japan, they argue, and then deal with China as a group? That possible?
Yes. I mean, you and I have talked down through the months and months and months. Let's see. A trade coalition of the willing. EU would rather do business with the U.S. than it would with China. I think the same is true with Japan. I think the same is true with Mexico. We're moving forward on that. That's a diplomatic issue, but I like it. I think the Chinese, may find themselves more isolated if they don't come into the global process and if they don't provide new information and begin to say yes to the asks of President Trump. President Trump continues to speak well about President Xi, but they've got to show some action. I'm not in a mood to bash anybody today. I'm a happy camper with all these numbers.